Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Azriel, and as usual, I got my boy Anthony here with me.
And you might be asking yourself, what's all this then? Well, this is Accursed Brew. Today we're going to be talking about Atomfall, our first impressions of it. I played about 5 hours of the game so far. It is a very short game. I was reading like 10 to even like if you do everything, like 18 hours. Like it's pretty short. Azzy, about how far did you get?
I'm about 7 hours at this point, although I do think I am encroaching on the end of the game. I haven't necessarily done every single thing that you can do. There's kind of reasons for that I'll get into here in a moment, and then more in depth kind of as we go along. But 7 hours with another couple hours left in it. Now, just in case you came here just to hear whether or not you should or shouldn't get the game, and if maybe you do get the game, kind of how you should get the game, because modern day gaming, you got your options how you want to go about purchasing your content. So we'll start this off with a TLDR from myself, from Anthony, and then from there we'll get more in depth about like the various aspects of the game that we'll touch on here. Now, off the bat, look, I give the game like a 6 out of 10. I think it's worth picking up on Game Pass, but for the full price, I would say no. I think if it's on a steep discount, like 50% off, maybe, but definitely not the full price. I think the world and the atmosphere in the game is exceptional. I think the voice acting in it, the art style, the animations of the characters themselves, I think is really good. When it comes to like the actual like combat in the game, the gunplay, the melee, not big. I'm not like a big fan of it, to be honest. I think it's fine, it's passable. I definitely think when it comes to like the UI though, the game definitely suffers. And then there's like some other little things here and there too as well that kind of like kills me on it. I will admit the performance is good, but just there's so many little things in this where I think it's either half baked or just outright not good. That kind of brings me down to like a 6 out of 10. And then but yeah, I mean, Anthony, tell me how you feel, man.
So similar. I think we have different grievances with the game, but we both agree that it's far from perfect. I liked certain aspects of it a lot more than you did. There were things that bothered me that didn't bother you, and vice versa. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Just real quick, get that out of the way. Try it out on Game Pass. It's definitely worth it on Game Pass. This is the type of game that Game Pass should be full of. This level of quality, I think. Not that I don't think there should be better games on Game Pass, but I think this is like the perfect game for Game Pass. Full price, $50. No shot. Not until it's 20 bucks, $30 or less. If you want to actually own it, but yeah, it's on Game Pass, so that's a moot point at this point anyway. But yeah, we're gonna get into the actuality of why we feel this way about it. So I'm gonna send that back over to Azriel.
Yeah, so we're gonna start this off. We're gonna be tackling this in chunks. Bear in mind. So we're gonna start off with the world and atmosphere, the gameplay, the UI, because I think the UI is a big sticking point for this. And then after that, we'll wrap it up with our final thoughts. So the world and atmosphere, man, I really like the art style of this game. I think it looks really pretty, and I think the characters they look really goofy and they kind of have like it just feels really fitting. I guess the big mechs that you see in it too, I think are really cool, but I think there's not much else in terms of like that alt history that's going on, right? And this is kind of like what this game is like, what if this happened instead, right? I think there kind of leaves a lot to be desired in that realm of things. But again, like the way the actors sound, I think is really funny, man. I mean, they have like a really fun way of speaking. And I lived in England for a while. I don't remember people talking kind of like the way that they did, like Summit. I don't remember people saying that ever. Maybe it's more like a regional thing, but yeah, I don't remember it too specifically. But yeah, I mean, what did you think about it, man? What did you think about the way just the way things look in there?
I enjoyed the world or the zone, whatever they wanted to call it, the inclusion zone or whatever it was, quarantine zone for it, where the game actually takes place. The little village was cool. The characters in the village were nice. I enjoyed kind of the presentation of the whole thing, and I think it was more so for me a proof of concept, especially because this is the studio's first RPG. I mean, they did Sniper Elite, which on its own is a super fun game, but a very mechanically and different story, different type of game story wise. So this is completely new to them. So I do think there are some growing pains, but they did a lot of like the important stuff when it comes to RPGs well. And I think it's a really good stepping stone for Rebellion moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could definitely see that this has a good shell on it. It's just kind of like the innards need some work. I think presentation. is a really like kind of all encompassing way to put sort of how I would feel about the good things about the game. I think the presentation on it is great. I'm a big fan of like the nonlinear branching narrative that the game has. It's very interesting, and it's definitely kind of like a far cry of what I'm used to. I will admit that it gives me big Fallout 76 vibes in that a lot of what you're seeing people give to you, or like not necessarily people, that's a problem, but a lot of like where you're getting the quest from, are from like pieces of paper. It's like a lot of like logs, a lot of reading and things like that. And I'm not like so much of a big fan of that. I feel like you tend to lose a lot of nuance in the world itself when you're just reading stuff and you don't get to like hear all the flavor that a person would add to that. But I do like that concept itself. I think it's super interesting, kind of what they did. Again, the presentation is super great.
I do think the like you're saying about the presentation with getting like your quest quote unquote quest markers. 'Cause I know on the default settings there's no quest markers in the game. You just kind of get like coordinates, or like they tell you where to look for something, which I prefer. I prefer that over, the playing Fallout 4 and talking to somebody, or even worse, Starfield, and talking to somebody, having to fly somewhere, go talk to somebody else, and just hitting those checkpoints as you're walking through and not caring about anything.
Yes, for sure.
Um, I do think it lets you connect with the world in a much more natural way than a lot of other RPGs do. But I do think, and we'll get into UI later, I do think the way that they put that out there and like let you go through stuff is a huge drawback, to actually go back and look at that information that you've gathered.
Yeah.
Because there is so much of it that it gets very cluttered eventually. But I do like that that is how they approached it, instead of just, here's your quest marker, go walk over here. Here's your quest marker, go walk over this side now. It let me actually like learn the map and like figure out the world and explore it in a more natural way. Um, but I think we're good on world and atmosphere. I think that was for us the strongest point of the game.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure.
And now we're going to get into some other parts that we had more of issues with. So we're going to talk about gameplay next. I liked the gameplay a little bit more than Azrael, specifically the gunplay. I think that the gunplay was very nice, not being bullet spongy. If you hit them in the head, they die. It was very Stalker Metro like there. They didn't have, you didn't have to worry about penetration stats for your bullets or anything like that. The melee, on the other hand, not great. I felt myself, and it may be because I'm bad, but I felt myself when I was first starting out. I had a cricket bat, which was a medium attack speed weapon, it said, and I kept getting stun locked by people just like fisting, like, the fisticuffs coming up to me and going pop, 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 pop. They would just like get me in a cycle where I was stun locked, getting knocked back. I had a lot of difficulty with the melee. Like I would be bandaging after every single fight and just using all my things that I had gathered in the last 5 minutes just immediately went into bandages. Um, the stamina system was pretty nice because it goes off of like your heartbeat instead of like a stamina bar going down. So like the more that you run, the more that you're fighting, spamming attacks and stuff. If you're in a stressful situation, your heart rate is higher and your recovery is going to be slower. In that case, and you have to like slow down and like get your breathing back together. Um, I think a lot of it is really well done, specifically the combat stuff outside of melee. Now, for the way the NPCs react, the AI, there's a little bit of issues there, in my opinion. I don't like the stealth system at all. Um, Enemies see you like no matter what, and I like even specced into stealth a little bit, and I was still getting spotted immediately. I don't know what your experience was with that, but I think it didn't work as intended, or I was just bad at it.
Yeah, dude, the sneaking in the game was basically useless outside of like the first time that they introduce it to you. It just felt like like what's the point? Like I found myself kind of just running through fights after a certain point. Luckily, a lot of the NPCs don't really have good aim, so you can kind of just run through them. But I think that that kind of speaks volumes to like my, uh, I don't know, like my appreciation of the combat in the game. I think the gunplay, I will echo like the idea that like if you hit them in the head, they're dead. I like that a lot. But I think beyond that, it just didn't feel very good. A lot of the guns are just really broken and busted. I've never really been a big fan of that in a lot of games where the tools you're given are just like the worst version of them. and it just kind of
Yeah,
kills the.
a single shot shotgun, and you can only carry 20 shells, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like, that's rough. I'm just not a big fan of that. Like you said with the melee, I think the melee sucked in the game. There's a lot of, like, kind of build up with your initial, like, swing when you're using anything but, like, a light weapon. Like, a light weapon, you get to attack pretty quick, right? There's really not too much startup, but any of the bigger weapons, I mean, you're, like, taking, like, 2 seconds to, like, rear it up before you go for a hit. Maybe that's
yeah.
realistic, but it's not fun. I didn't really care for it. Now, I think the only other thing to kind of touch on would be like the leveling system. Now, the game is it's a short game. It doesn't need complicated leveling system, anything super deep, anything like that. I think that would almost. I think there's two ways you could tackle this. Actually, I think you could say like because it's so short, maybe you could have something deep where it gives you replayability. But then you need other aspects of the game to give you that engagement to want to go back and visit it. I think this was such a simple system, and you don't necessarily get any sort of replayability from the game. So I don't know. It's not like I really have any complaints with it. It's just like, it's like the bare minimum is essentially what it feels like. So
I would agree in that it is the bare minimum. But I would almost prefer like the system that we got, like the skill system of getting those training points or whatever it is and
mhm.
gathering them together and unlocking with like skill books and stuff. While semi interesting was so shallow that I think it would have better they would have been better served just to treat progression similar to Stalker as instead of stats, it's like just new gear.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you get a gun that's not rusty now, or a double barrel shotgun. Ooh, like that should have been the progression system to me in a game this short.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think you're on point with what would have made more sense in this setting. I could get why a company would want to like, or devs would want to like toy around with the idea of like leveling up and things like that and progression and blah, blah, blah. Like that could be like a fun way to give you a reason to revisit the game. Like, okay, this game I went, sneaking. Well, maybe this game I'm going to go like when just combat or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Gives you that opportunity. I just think that there's other parts of this game that like don't necessarily cater to that replayability. And I think what you said would be kind of like the better way to do that.
Yeah, I think for games that are less than 30 hours long, even though it is an RPG, I don't think you need a skill tree.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And then finally, too, when it comes to like the UI, I think this is where we get. I think we're going to agree on most of this. The UI in the game is pretty rough. I'm going to leave like the journal and the questing and things like that to you to take over. But I know one thing that really, it honestly like kind of like pisses me off and like it just makes me not want to play the game. And this is like ever present. Is there are just so many pop-ups in the game that are huge and right in your face. You'll be talking
Yes.
to an
They
NPC,
take up a third of your screen.
dude. You'll talk to an NPC and it'll just cover his face, and it's
Yeah.
like what are you doing? Like why? And like
And you have to like hold X to like move past it or something or dismiss it. Yeah.
yeah, it to me it's just so cumbersome. It's just so intrusive. It really kills like kind of the my vibe playing through the game and my desire to even want to talk to an NPC when his face is covered up for some important
Well, that's what we
dialogue.
were saying. The part we enjoyed most of the game was the art style, the world design, the atmosphere, the conversations, and you're covering up 90% of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's just rough. I'm not a big fan of the UI. I think a lot of it is pretty, it's just underbaked. The most basic iteration of it when they started, it feels like is what got pushed to production, and I definitely think it could have used a couple more passovers on it to really refine it. But yeah, it's just not for me. I thought the UI kind of sucked and really killed my vibe.
I am gonna play devil's advocate on the UI really quick.
Yeah.
With the intrusive pop-ups, while I hate it and there should be an instant option to like turn it off or like make them smaller or something like that, maybe that will come in an update. I do think there is something to be said because mechanically this game is so different than other RPGs that people are used to. Like, if people go into this expecting Fallout, they're not going to understand what to do in this game.
But it's
And I think that's what a lot of people understood. So I do think they kind of went with lowest common denominator of just like, we need to treat everybody like they're an idiot. Here's the tutorial. Here is what you have to do. Here is what this means, that type of thing. But starting the game as somebody who understands video games already, it's such a slog because you're like, I know what crafting is. I know what this is. But I do think they were worried that people were going to get into it and think like, oh, why isn't this Fallout?
yeah, I get where you're coming from, but the one contention I have is that some of the most intrusive pop-ups I feel like I deal with are ones where it's just like, hey, here's a new like lead. And it's like right in the
Yeah,
middle of your screen. Hey, here's a
yeah,
new this or that. This is a new area. It's right in the middle of your screen. There's no
100%.
dismissing it. I know there's some accessibility options in it that maybe can let you toy with it a little bit more. I guess maybe I could have put more time and effort into like messing with the settings. It just again, I don't think that necessarily does it any favors. Where it's like, yeah, like go in the settings and go adjust it for like a half an hour and figure out what like works best for you. It should, that shouldn't be like the bar that they set. But I'm curious,
Yeah,
man.
I
You
do agree there.
tell me what you think about the journal and stuff because I have my own thoughts on it. But I feel like we'll agree on this. But I want you to kind of push it.
Ass.
Yeah.
It is ass.
It's bad.
It is one of the most cluttered, like sluggish, difficult to get through and find stuff journals I've ever experienced in an RPG.
Yeah, it's
It is
bad.
just overall like it's just bad. I'm sure you'll have it pulled up on the screen at this point of the video too, like just scrolling through or something. But like it's one of those. It's like going into your computer files and having to go through 17 subfolders to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, it's bad, dude. You know what makes it so this is the thing. I agree everything with you. Geez, I can't even speak. I agree with everything that you just said, but I'm so flustered over this that I can't talk.
Yeah.
Uh,
Menus just make me so upset.
I'm so fucking pissed. But I think the thing that kills me, man, the most is that the quest title will change. And it's like I'll forget, like I don't even know what quest I'm on. Like I'll talk to the grandma and I'm doing some stuff for her. And as you do steps through it, the name of the quest will change and you won't be tracking it any longer because I guess technically it's a new quest, but it's in the same chain
Yeah.
of them. And it's like now I have to go like I have to go like sift through everything and then find what it is that I'm doing that aligns with like what just happened. It's like very cumbersome and it drags and it takes away from the game. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's not for me.
Especially because of how they're trying to do the quest system with it being like an exploration thing.
Yeah. It's just not very good, man. It's not very good. Definitely underbaked. Definitely could do with a couple more iterations. But yeah, I mean, tell me some of your final thoughts, man, as we wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, we covered pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about, but just to like summarize, like 7 out of 10, mid game, but like worth your time for the experience because I do think there are very worthwhile things in this game. And also something that we didn't talk about, you could turn on quest markers. They have a super kind of like Baldur's Gate did where you can customize like every little bit on the difficulty. And if you want combat to be difficult but you want the exploration stuff to be a more traditional RPG, or you want combat to be easy but you don't want any quest markers, hints are going to be super weird or off, like it's not going to have coordinates anywhere, you're going to have to go off of like context clues, like you could have that set up that way, which I do want to give credit for because I think customization is the most important thing, and accessibility in video games is great. um you should be able to play, it's a single player game, you should be able to customize your experience and play how you want to. So I do want to give them credit for that. I also think we got to give them credit for the fact that it runs great. I mean, I was running it on ultra on my 2060, so with no issues. I don't know how your experience was, obviously we have different hardware, but I assume you were running it fine as well.
Yeah, that was going to be one of the last things I said on it was the performance on it, dude. It's great,
Stellar, and it looks great.
and I haven't had any bugs, dude. And like, how often do you
Yeah.
play a modern day game nowadays? Anyone out here, PC games can appreciate the fact that modern day gaming is like just riddled with poor performance and lots of bugs. And this game does not have
especially
either.
especially a game like this where it's like, I wouldn't call it open world, but it's like
It's open
more of like
enough.
yeah, it's open enough, and there's like enemies on patrols throughout like entire big open zones, and like AI that could do weird stuff, but I hadn't seen any issues.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. The only thing I will add on to what you mentioned about the difficulty, just to to like further contextualize everything, is that I saw you on the stream. You pick like the what was it? I don't remember the exact name, but it's like the standard playthrough. Like when it came
Yeah, it
to
was like recommended. It's like
recommended, that's
the
the word.
or the second over from the right. So I think like technically it's normal is what it broke down when I was customizing. Everything was set to like normal or like unassisted or something like that. It wasn't the hardest difficulty, but it was harder than like it was still a very hard experience, and I ended up tweaking a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's to give us to give you guys context on like we were playing the recommended way that the devs wanted us to play, and like all of the criticism is encompasses that particular sort of play style that they intended. But again, as you said, you can customize it as you guys want. But yeah, he Anthony 7 out of 10. I'm still feeling pretty confident about a 6 out of 10. I definitely think it's worth checking out on Game Pass. I mean, if you got it, it's just one download away, right? Um, And it is very much designed for this kind of platform. I think it's good for this. But I think with all that said, I hope you guys appreciated this. Please leave us a like if you guys enjoyed this video. It helps us out a lot. Comment your experience with the game. I'm really curious what you guys have to say. Again, I love the discussion that happens in these comments and would be very interested to hear what you guys think. And then subscribe for more content. We're going to have more of these types of videos, more conversation about sort of like soft reviews, and then more just kind of like gameplay in
A lot
general.
of cool games, a lot of cool games coming out in April. We're gonna have some fun stuff to talk about, boys.
Yeah. These next couple months are going to be phenomenal. So definitely subscribe if you guys want to check that out. I love you guys, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Love you.